Hi there and welcome to the first Culture Chat for 2021. It was fantastic throughout 2020 to talk to colleagues across the university and find out more about what you're doing. And we're looking forward to having many more chats this year. In this Culture Chat, we're joined by Marc, the Director of the Sydney Policy Lab, and Robyn Dowling, the Dean of the School of Architecture, Design and Planning. On the culture strategy, we've been working with Robyn and Marc since late last year on the Open Society Common Purpose Task Force, which is investigating how Australia should re-engage with the rest of the world and rebuild its social bonds in light of the COVID-19 pandemic.
So thanks for joining us, Marc and Robyn. So to start with, Marc, can you tell us a bit about the Open Society Common Purpose Task Force and what it's hoping to achieve?
So the task force aims to bring together leaders from across different parts of Australian society, so from industry and business, from civil society, from education, to talk about how Australia can re-engage with the world after the pandemic. And that raises questions as to how do you safely open the borders? How can we move back to a sort of globalized international world when families are able to reunite if they've been separated by the pandemic because of their migration status? And how we might build a sort of more vibrant, open-looking society and economy for the future.
So Robyn, as someone who works on cities and urban life, how do you think that Sydney and other cities should go about the next stage of the pandemic and reopening?
Well, I think if I pick up on Marc's point, I mean, cities are engines of innovation, of social innovation and economic innovation. The fuel for those engines is actually connections and global connections. So, you know, the flow of ideas across international and national borders, the flows of expertise and of people. So I think what we need to do for cities is really just to acknowledge that we're interconnected, we're global. Sydney is a global city as the rest of Australian cities, and we need to just re-establish those connections so that ideas and innovation can happen.
And finally, could each of you give us one big thing that you think Australia should get right, hopefully, as we start to reopen?
I mean, I guess I would say that open-looking mindset that Robyn's just talked about is absolutely vital. So many parts of Australian society rely on these international connections, and we all understand why the borders have been closed and the fantastic pandemic response the country has had. But finding that spirit of outward-looking engagement with the rest of the world is going to be absolutely crucial for creativity, for economic success, for educational success, and just holding on to that thought and that part of the personality of the country, I think is going to be vital for the future.
And I'm actually going to go micro because I think we need to get public space right. So in the pandemic, we all had to retreat into our homes and our private spaces are a lot more, but we also post-pandemic we've noticed that outdoor public spaces, places where we can congregate beyond our homes, where we can sit, where we can be out of the shade, where we can see others that we don't necessarily normally connect with, that came really important during the pandemic, and I think there's an opportunity to do public space so much better.
Rethinking our public spaces and our conception of the public good, having a national character that remains open, some big questions posed to us there by Robyn and Marc, and certainly questions that the task force will be tackling in the coming weeks. If you'd like to know more about the task force, do get in touch. We'd love to tell you more about it. It's certainly been an energising exercise in bringing together different sectors of society and an example, we hope, of how our values of openness and engagement can be put into action.